beyond pre-production, and Paul Schaefer realized that he had a legal commitment with the famous member of SNL, which was Gilda Radner on Broadway. So he could not get out of that. And so when John Landis, the director, called John Belushi, and John Belushi said, "Get Murphy." And John Landis had seen another movie called The Big Bus, B-U-S, not bust, B-U-S, and it was a big comedy out of Paramount Picture. And I wrote some of the music for it, and I appeared as a smarmy lounge piano player. That's one of the things. It's coincidental. Anyway, so I got a call from John Landis, the director of the Blues Brothers. Excuse me as I took a big glass of water. And he said, "Murph, do you want to do this?" And I said, "Do I want to do it? Of course. More than anything in the world. Some of my heroes are in the band." And anyway, I reminded Cropper was strangely enough, Cropper was a big fan of The Big Bus, and they kind of remembered me from the first Rhythm and Blues Festival. So it was, there's another version of this story, which was basically that Paul Schaefer recommended me. But, at that time I was hardly and even today, in the same league with Paul Schaefer, who's a very famous guy and always produced and known, from the Stones or the Beatles, or all of that. But I had been in New York performing prior to that with another band called Lenny and the Squigtones. Lenny and the Squigtones was an offshoot of Laverne and Shirley.
I remember that, yes.
And they were going to do a tour of America, and they liked The Big Bus and a bunch of other things I did. So I went on tour with them, and then when we hit New York, I got a chance to meet Paul Schaefer, and the other part of the story is that he recommended me. Well, either way, I was in a fortuitous situation. I was so lucky, and after the movie, we did a tour that Paul produced, and it was just great fun. I can't say that my liver has recovered, but there were some celebrations. Let's put it that way.
It sounds like you had a lot of fun, too. And, of course, you had your own band, a movie called Murph and the Magic Tones. Now, was it your idea to come up with that name, or was it somebody else that came up with the name?
The name was Dan Aykroyd came up with the name for the Blues Brothers. I mean, for me and my band in the Blues Brothers movie. It was called something else with Paul Schaefer, but because he didn't do it, and you put a couple M's together, you get Murph and the Magic Tones, and that's what Dan Aykroyd suggested. I went, "Yay, way to go. I get my name." I get my name in the movie in more ways than one. So I said, I love it. Let's do some jamming and have some fun, and we did. It was John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd opened a tavern. See, Dan Aykroyd was part of the Toronto Second City, and when he came to New York, he met a lot of other people, in Saturday Night Live, especially John. So they hit it off right away as being fans of the blues and fans of the music in general.
Okay.
So John and Dan, excuse me, I have to take sips of water sometimes. John and Dan opened a bar right across the street from 1616 North Wells. It was probably 1650. And anybody was friends of us or any member of the band would go in there and drink and, have fun and laugh. And it was frowned upon, by John Landis if it stayed open too late, because if you have a 6 o'clock call in the morning, you don't want to be drinking till 4 a.m. Not a good idea.
Right, that's true also, too. And, of course, internet rumor, Murph and the Magic Tones, new release tomorrow. Confirm that.
That's funny.
Or as they say, if it's on the internet and if it's true, it probably is. We're kidding about that. So,
yes, we are.
And of course, you're working with Duck Dunne, Steve Cropper, Willie Hall, Tom Bones Malone, and Lou Marine with the Blues Brothers. What was your working relationship like with those? And how well did you get along and everything else?
Well, they were very accommodating and very welcoming. And when we did Blues Brothers 2000, which was another Blues Brothers movie, all of those guys came back, except John Belushi, who was obviously deceased.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happened, Lou Marini, who I think at that time he was already with James Taylor as his saxophonist. He is currently with James Taylor. He got a band together, and they had come to me and they said, "Murph, you want to do this?" And my first and only child had just been born.
Oh, okay.
And her name was Veronica, a very successful actress in her own right. Starred on Broadway already in the age of 21. The play she was in, coincidentally, is called Chicago, kind of a famous Broadway play that she played Roxy Hart. Anyway, so I get back to so Veronica was born, and my wife looked at me and said, "Don't you dare go on the road." she didn't want me to, and I understood it, so about 4 years ago, Blue Lou was in town because he plays with a lot of famous people, and I think he was with Barbara Streisand at the time, and he said, "Murph, do you want to go on the road?" And I said, "I'm going to pack my bag right now." So we do a lot of gigs in the summertime, and I just got back from an appearance outside of Venice, Italy, with that band. I think it's, if I could pronounce the Italian word, Perdonone is the name of the town, little small town, but we usually get, a couple of thousand people everywhere we play. So I flew to Venice and got a couple of nights sleep. Then we did the show New Year's Eve. We stopped playing at 11:45 so everyone could ring in the New Year. Then we did a second set and some encores, and walked across the street to the hotel, got a bus, went to the Venice airport so we could be there 3 hours early, and then I flew into Amsterdam and took another flight, and the whole thing took me about 15 hours to get home.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, you're probably the ultimate world traveler, still on a mission from God, they say. It seems like they still remember the Blues Brothers from overseas.
It's a strange thing, and I marvel at it all the time. There's not very many bands, unless they had huge hit bands, that do it. Some of them do. Some of them, are as agey as I am, but it's pretty rare. So what will keep this going, I think, on for a long, long time? As you know, there are tons of tribute bands. Mm-hmm. And there are tons of Blues Brothers tribute bands all over the world. But when the original, this is what the band is called, the original Blues Brothers band. And it is a very unusual band because we have three vocalists, three guys who are great singers and chromatic harp players, they're just fabulous, and some of the guys who are still around is like Cropper, and he's out, and Bones comes out, and Blue Lou comes out, and I come out, and some of the other guys who are more sedentary, they don't come out as frequently. Maybe I don't know, you get old, and that
Right. Yeah.
what I've just described to you is a typical day of travel with that band. So you've got to be up for that. And some of the guys just, want to work locally. A lot of the guys who are in the band are studio musicians in New York and Nashville, Tennessee. So they're wonderful, wonderful people to play with and hang out with and go out and eat with and checking the cuisines and also sightseeing. I love seeing, places I've never been before. It's really fun.
It sounds like a lot of fun, too. And since you hit upon that subject, what were your favorite cities when you guys toured? The old Blues Brothers and the current one you have right now. What were some of your favorite cities and venues to play in?
Well, Chicago was my favorite place with the original. When John Belushi was alive, it was my favorite because, I had so many friends in Chicago. But as far as the new band, I think Venice, Italy, was certainly one of my favorite. And I'll take that back. There is a place in Norway that had a big barge on the Rhine River, and we performed on this huge barge to the entire riverfront. And there were people in the water, people swimming, and it was quite an affair. And then they had fireworks afterwards, and that I think in Norway is a beautiful, beautiful country. It just truly is.
It does.
And also,
go ahead.
Another one. We played at a blues festival in Australia, and it was called and still is called the Byron Bay Blues Festival. It's a huge, huge festival. They have big tents. They're just you get thousands and thousands of people will fit into each tent. And what they do is they have 5 of them, and there is constant music in all the tents at all times, and they're just the Australian people were so welcoming to us, and we had an incredible time. So that's kind of my 2 favorites for the recent band.
And of course, just lastly as well too, before we get to other work, so what are your thoughts on the Blues Brothers 2000 compared to the original Blues Brothers movie?
Well, Blues Brothers 2000 was uniquely different. The Dan Aykroyd, who is really the writer and creator of the words, although John Landis, the director, and he worked on it a little bit. But Danny's gotta say, he's a brilliant guy. Wouldn't use that word, and I don't use that word lightly. He created something that was different. Unfortunately, the movie cost $100 million to make.
Wow.
So, yeah. And Eric Clapton was in it. A lot of very B.B. King, Bo Diddley, a lot of very and luckily Paul Schaefer was the maestro at that particular time. But the idea of the first movie was very rebellious, and this was Saturday Night Live, and that was rebellious. So it was perfect timing, and that's what worked for the first movie, and all those songs, most of them from the Stax, Volt, Sam and Dave and Otis Redding from their catalog, which makes sense because Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn made those records. Mm-hmm. They're just so. So that was that, and now in the second movie, it was similar songs, but the mode for the plot had a young boy in it, and he was a very rebellious boy. And what happens is, you remember the Penguin, the woman who played the nun. She convinced Elwood, Danny, to take this young boy and be a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want he didn't want that, but